Hello and welcome to our latest episode of my podcast, where I talk to very interesting founders, entrepreneurs, and leaders, mainly around London. Sometimes we stray outside London. And just a reminder, please hit subscribe to get notified, of course, of upcoming guests. And we've had a lot in the past year of very interesting topics and guests around the built environment, architects and planners and so on. And I'm delighted to welcome Matt Chamberlain, who is an architect, this afternoon. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for inviting me on. Looking forward to joining you this afternoon.
Yeah, me too. And I always find it fascinating talking to architects. I think maybe I'm a frustrated architect myself, perhaps, but and also living in London and being surrounded by interesting buildings, there's a natural kind of curiosity I have, I guess, about around the process of architecture, and we're going to explore a little bit of that in a second. But Matt, tell us a little bit about your background. Have you always been an architect? Did you study at university? Tell us a little bit about the early years, perhaps, in the career.
Sure. I followed a pretty conventional route in terms of going from A levels into university and then through the part one, so degree, out into practice for 6 months, and then back into a postgraduate study for 2 years, emerging at the end of that into sort of the big wide world and sort of building my career from there, really.
And now you're running your own practice. What's the practice called? Where are you based? How many people have you got?
So the practice is called Chamberlain. We're based in Basingstoke, and we have a small satellite office in Fitzrovia. The practice is we've been on a journey over the last probably 18 years, where from starting with just the three founders, we kind of grew to around 50 in 2019. We had our challenges through COVID, and then the kind of the period that followed. And currently we have just over 30 full-time staff, albeit we do have a number of subcontractors and consultants who we work with in order to bolster our team. So I think we've got our Christmas deal on Friday. Well, what day? It's Wednesday today, Friday. We got 38 people attending that. So that's kind of snuck up on us over the last sort of 18 months, where we've had quite a bit of growth. So
That's good to hear. Good to hear. And in the world of architecture, is that sort of size? Where would you sort of pitch yourselves? Would you say you're mid-sized or
we're very much in the squeeze middle. So
Okay.
we're bigger than a boutique, but we're not. There's a lot of practices of around our size, which are sort of 25 to 40 people, where actually it's quite a difficult space to exist in. And we've had 10 years living in that space. So I think certainly have benefited from the experience of that challenge.
While we're on this, I was going to ask you later, but let's go with that now. I mean, would you like to break out of that? Are you happy with where you're at right now, or would you like to break out of that current squeezed middle?
So I mean, this is one of those questions, isn't it? Where is it personal or is it practice based in terms of the answer? I mean, I certainly think that we want to remain agile, and the experience that we had when we were around 50 people was that to keep a practice of that scale sustained with work is actually that's a real challenge, and I think that challenge has got substantially greater over the last 5 years, where projects are that much more unpredictable because the economic pressures on them are far greater. So whether a project I mean, I mean, half of what we do is education focused. Half of what we do is residential focused in
Mm.
terms of our kind of sectors.
Yeah.
But we do have other work that kind of sits between those two core sectors. But certainly within the residential world, it's a really challenging environment at the moment.
Mm. Yeah.
Projects ultimately are marginal in terms of delivering a return, and it doesn't take much for a project to move from being in that positive business case position to being in a negative business case position. And
Mm.
the impact upon consultants, architects, is that what we've seen is that we aren't getting commitments from clients to move projects forwards in as larger sections of stages. So
Yeah.
um, it's much more incremental instruction. So I would say that we, um, as as we have done over the last 18 months, we probably need to carry um, sort of 20 to 25% more projects
Yeah.
at any one time in order to ensure that we maintain good utilization of our team.
Yeah. Because carrying
Um,
that extra fixed cost would be, there's quite a risk, isn't
it's
it?
a penalty. Yeah, it's a real
Yeah.
penalty. And at the end, I mean, at the end of the day, we sell to, as much as um, we do create value, and we try to position ourselves as value makers. We're in an environment where we're selling time, so we need to be able to deliver value out of that time. Um, so in terms of where we want to take the practice, there's certainly a few moves in terms of the operational side of the business, I think, where we need more help, where it will give us the capacity to be more thoughtful and proactive in how we're generating opportunities and um, being able to drive our brand recognition and profile. So I see investment in those areas. We are mindful of the advent of AI and um, choosing the right way to deliver services in order to remain competitive. Um, from a position we were sort of five or six, five sort of that sort of 2019 time, 2019, 2020. Um, it was all about everything was coming in house. Everything was about continually growing the team. We would certainly personally, I'd be quite reticent to step back into that world, the
Yeah.
world that we've existed in within the last couple of years, where we have utilised external sort of drafting services which are overseas in order to really sort of team up on projects quite quickly. And the sort of secondment model, which we've been using, where we've been bringing in support from other practices the and this sort of network of consultants to bolster our core team. I
Yeah.
see that I see that certainly remaining,
Yeah.
or at the very least, it gives us that breathing space to assess whether what we're going through is a blip in our workload, or actually
Yeah.
whether there's underlying change in terms of the environment in which we're existing.
Yeah. Is there, yeah, I was going to ask you actually in terms of sort of liquidity, if you like, of people and talent. How is that? I mean, if you wanted to scale up fairly quickly, perhaps using UK based people, is that difficult or hard right now?
It's difficult. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we're in a, yeah, it is difficult. Um,
And is that on the supply of our qualified architects, or is there another barrier or
I think, I
obstacle
mean,
there?
there's two barriers
Mm.
to it. One is the sort of the Brexit situation, sort of the whole
Yeah.
Brexit scenario of there was a whole load of talent which has returned to the EU, which we're now not able to tap into. We do have three or four members of staff who are international, who we have taken through the visa program. But I mean, we are getting literally. I mean, that position is changing week to week, and what the qualifying salaries are and what the other criteria that need to be met are is an ever shifting set of requirements. So it is difficult to employ internationally. In terms of UK-based talent, we have a lot of talent. We have a lot of there are a lot of students who go through architectural education, probably far greater than are required. But I think what you see is that because architecture, the built environment is tapped into the economy, that you lose waves of individuals as they step away from a consultancy type position into more of a client focused role, or they go and work for sort of contracting building firms, or they step out of the industry as well. It's an incredibly diverse education. I think very, very good grounding in all sorts of skills, which are really, really transferable. So that's great. But what you find is there's big gaps in terms of, okay, we want people who are coming in with, say, sort of 5 years post qualification experience. They're sort of those junior job runners who can come in, really grasp a project, and they'll develop with the practice. Finding those people is actually quite difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that
Because
was
they
part
tend
of the
to be
reason.
already employed, I guess, is it?
Because they have probably been pushed out as a result of uh, a number of them would have left there's far fewer of them as a result of the downturn we had in COVID. So
Right.
that's the kind of there's a gap
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you go, I mean, it's always been the case. Whether you
Yeah.
go back to COVID 2008, you go back to the late sort of the 2000.com, or there's these breaks in terms of where people get pushed out of the industry,
Yeah.
and so those people they're in quite short supply. And I suppose the other challenge is finding the right individuals to fit within your practice,
Yeah.
and to who will add to the kind of diversity in the mix, and
Yeah.
really contribute to
Let's explore two.
where you're
Yeah,
going.
great. Let's explore two things there. One is I'm just going back to, even though you're more in the market, perhaps for the 5+ year experience post qualification. I'm curious of young people and the fact of AI and the headlines, especially in the last 3 to 6 months, and it seems to be that AI is really biting into entry level jobs. What's the situation with, if you're a graduate from architecture? Is it still fairly protected? I mean, architects have always embraced technology for quite a long time. What does that look like for a new graduate going in?
Well, we're adopting a number of kind of AI workflows into the
Mm,
practice, mostly through the sort of LLM
mm,
areas. We are doing some image generation, but we're certainly getting good value from LLM adoption. In terms of the impact upon those those initial jobs and roles, I don't know if it's not really affecting what we're asking people to do within our practice. I mean, we're seeing it more of a case of enhancing what we can do rather than replacing roles. I think. I mean, we've just employed two graduates, so sort of two degree level graduates, and I think we had 150 applications for for those two roles, and that was over the space of sort of 2 weeks. So there is and it's really tough
Yeah.
out there, because what's
Yeah.
also happening is with sort of, I mean, this sounds, well, I suppose I'm just going to address it head on. So those entry level jobs, in terms of, I mean, architecture's never been a greatly paid profession, and those entry level jobs are now they sit around national kind of minimum wage level, really, ultimately, and changes changes to sort of the NI contributions, and then there's been a mandate from the RBA to push wages to national living wage, which outside of London is 28,000 a year for the sort of hours that people would do within our roles, and in London I think it's 31, equivalent of 31,000. Now, um, if you go to sort of salary surveys, I mean, that's almost a 10% increase uh, on those part one salaries, on those entry level salaries. And the challenge is that um, the salaries that sit above it aren't necessarily moving by the same
Mm.
rates.
Yeah.
Um, and it's the sort, and so it really needs to fit within practice psyche of,
Yeah.
we bring talent in, we develop it, we're in it for the long term. We want to build those connections, we want to build those relationships, so that those individuals, either go out in the world and do good, or return to the practice, and we benefit directly from the sort of the training and development that we've assisted them with, as opposed to, I could pay 20%, 30% more, and I'm going to get, probably double the return in terms of productivity from the
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting, isn't it, how the minimum wage is warping other aspects of wage banding and structures within
yeah,
companies. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it obviously is very well intended, and do I think that the salaries that um, do I think the salaries that are paid are fair in the kind of wider scheme of things?
Mm.
No.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, we're running a business which is working within a particular commercial environment,
Mm.
and that is the commercial environment within which we're
Yeah.
existing. So
Yeah.
um, unless we, really start to, we have to look at process, we have to look at AI adoption, we have to look at how we train and develop our people, so that we can begin to break that link between time and income.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Understand. You alluded to culture as one of the things as well. So you've got back to, maybe you're looking for the 5 year plus experience and there's a small pool, and then you're also looking for the people that will fit in your practice. And of course, there is what you do and the areas that you specialize in. We're going to come on to that in a second. What do you look for culturally, if anything? Do you think there is a culture? Could you define the culture at ACG?
um, well, we're just in the process of a rebrand at the moment. So we've been working on a rebrand for the last year, and that's going to be launched um, probably second half of next year. And there's not to say there was anything really wrong with our brand or our values previously, but I think we recognise that there are so many layers of there's been so much growth and change in the practice that we really wanted to kind of form a connection between the earliest days when there were just three of us, and then quickly we became six, and then that six became 12. And what was great about that period in terms of everyone working in such kind of close connection to each other, and us offering sort of project and leadership opportunities to everyone within the practice with support. And I think that kind of that strikes to the core of who we are. So every project is an opportunity, um, and we want we need our team to be looking at their tasks, their projects through that lens. And then, yeah, I think it kind of builds from there in terms of trying to be mindful of our role as leaders within projects, and really trying to use less to do more.
Okay. And would you say, I mean, do you have values, for example? Companies that I work with either have values or we've been working on values with them. Is that something that you have?
Yeah, we do have values. You're going to put me on the spot now.
It's surprising
So
how many people don't remember actually the values.
yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I think the one of the like I say, every project is a opportunity.
yeah.
Empowerment is a big thing that we will work on. So people taking responsibility and kind of owning the opportunities that they have. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there because yeah, I am that person who has managed to forget the values, albeit I'm the one who drives on values. So that's not great. Let's just leave it that it's a work in
We'll
progress.
move on. You will move on. You're not alone in that. I can assure you. Finding memorable values is quite a skill, actually. Um, just before we move off into other areas, because you mentioned it, I'm actually just let's go back to the AI large language model stuff. Anything interesting that you could point to there, or new uses
Yeah.
that's making an impact? Yeah.
Um, I mean, we were quite lucky that we've been working with someone who really kind of leads in this field for architects.
Mm,
We got in there quite early in terms of some sort of government sponsored training, which Kier was able to provide to us. And so over the last 18 months, we have been, we've been exploring and then really refining a number of areas which uh, we can appreciate and use within the business. I think an area which I would point to is around kind of brief, um, well, both brief analysis and interpretation. So, sort of typically, when we are asked to pitch for an opportunity, we get given a brief of sorts. And the difficulty with those documents is, if one of us is reading it, is ultimately we'll probably get halfway down the first page, and the creative juices are already running, and
mm,
um, a solution is starting to appear in your mind.
mm, mhm.
And so as you go through the remaining, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 10 pages of this brief, um, your unconscious bias is starting to steer the way that you're interpreting the information.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've built a set of prompts where we can feed the brief into we tend to use Claude for this. So
Yeah.
we feed it into Claude, and we ask it to identify sort of five pain points from the the brief, and then to suggest 3 win themes in order to for us to consider in the construction of our response. Um, our responses can be, it can be a written response, it can be a drawing, it can be physical model, 3-dimensional model, it can be any number of things. But that kind of distancing yourself
Mm.
um, from that process, I think is actually really, really healthy. And then equally, we'll feed responses back in to compare back against the brief and the scoring criteria. And I think that we've seen quite it could be the AI, or it could be actually we've now got better examples and better copy, and we're more experienced. But we've certainly seen a definite uptick in terms of the scorings that we're getting back on submissions. So that's been a real benefit.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, I guess I would imagine actually, yes, removing, I mean, because sometimes AI has got its own bias, but removing a lot of the human bias. Because I would
Yeah,
imagine if you're reading something down, you're beginning to formulate an image or an approach, you're kind of almost looking for things that reinforce that rather than things that
unfortunately,
disprove
yeah,
it. Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
the case.
I guess the challenge though is how do you continue to be competitive? Because if everybody else is beginning to use it and everybody is getting better and better in their responses,
Yeah,
how do you still maintain your competitive edge?
yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of look at it a little bit like a member of staff. So, as much as we brief individuals to assist in terms of developing ideas, so it's not a case of those ideas are um, just returned and then it leaves the practice. Actually, we have an internal review process. We
Yeah.
have a sort of design review process,
Yeah.
which draws upon the actual experience
Yeah.
of the individuals, and really
Yeah.
yeah, helps steer
Yeah.
that process.
Yeah. All the human experience, the skills, the awards, all the
Yeah.
examples that you've delivered over the years. Let's move to that. Let's segue to that. And yes, we'll put a link to the website because there's some wonderful examples on there of some really great design work. Should we just pick out a couple that you think you're particularly proud of, or you think are a great representation of the sectors that you work in? I know you do, for example, a lot of work around education. Maybe let's start there. What would be a great project that you think you're particularly proud of there?
Um, Gosh,
Got a lot to choose
I,
from, isn't there? I
there
know
is
you've
quite
got
a lot. There is
there's
quite a
some
lot to choose
great
from, and
examples.
yeah,
Marlborough College and some really top flight educational institutions you've done some great work for.
yeah, there is absolutely. I mean, our website at the moment is very much a stripped back. Um, yeah, I think there's only 20 or so projects on there, whereas actually we've done close to 140. So um, that will change with the rebrand. We did have far more extensive list on there, and then yeah, I think probably ended up over editing, but never mind. Okay, so in terms of answer to your question, I think there's one project which is on the education side, which I think is really quite significant for us at the moment. That would be it's a new further education building, which is 16 plus in terms of the attendees. So that would be typically they'll teach A levels, BTECs, and kind of adult training, which goes on beyond that. This project is in Tamworth, so in the Midlands. And I think what's really interesting about it is that that whole kind of further education space has been through or as collect as everything seems to have, but has had challenges. So what's happened in that space is that further education colleges have typically been amalgamating in order to streamline um, how they can deliver education more cost effectively, and also to if, for example, you end up with where you might have had 3 or 4 colleges in and around one town, um, and they're all being independently operated, they've amalgamated into a single group, and therefore, you can cut the administration costs attached to
Yeah.
running um, those institutions, because they all have boards of governors, they all have financial directors, etc., etc. So, what we've seen as a result of that is that colleges actually have land to dispose of. And our client in Tamworth is South Staffordshire College Group, had been through a similar exercise, and they had a college site to dispose of, peripheral to the town, and they found the opportunity within the historic centre of Tamworth. Now, Tamworth is, it could be any one of, I'm not actually sure how many market towns there are. It's probably close to 1,000, I'd imagine.
Mm.
Market towns across,
Yeah, I
regional
thought
market
so.
towns
Yeah.
across the country, who,
Yeah.
they're all kind of facing quite similar challenges in terms
Mm.
of high street decline. And so there was a department store that was within the centre of the town. It was immediately off the market square, next to a lovely Grade 1 listed church. And they elected to purchase this site. They commissioned us through invited competition. We were one of 4 who bid for the opportunity. This was our first pitch over Teams. So sort of it must have been 2020, I think, that we won the project. And it's literally was finished August time. So they've just had the first intake go into the college this September. And I think what's really great about that project is putting education in the centre of a town like that is really beneficial for the students, because we have vocational courses in there, like catering, hair and beauty. There's a care offering in there as well that they're teaching. Automotive as well, probably not quite as natural a fit into a town centre location, but the students are being taught within the town centre. The building can be public facing in the, it encourages the public to come in and then, utilise those teaching and it encourages people to come in and be taught. It encourages people to come and use the facilities in terms of the hair and beauty offer, the catering offer, and those. It's a very, very virtuous circle. And of course, the drive-in footfall from students is fantastic. When we've put, I think there's 1,500 people that are subscribed to courses within the college. So driving footfall through
Yeah.
that town centre is going to be quite transformational,
Yeah. I love
especially
that.
to
Yeah.
the Spudman, who has he parked his van right. His van is parked right in front of the building. So when we've been up to take our final photographs, he is there in all his glory. It's great.
Yeah, yeah, he's probably making a pretty good living, I would
Yeah.
imagine, from all those students. Was that a greenfield, brownfield? Well, it wouldn't have been a greenfield, but was it a
Brown.
brownfield?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
brownfield. Reusing existing bit. Well, it was demolition. It wasn't a retrofit that time.
yeah. Great. All right. Well, and that one's so that's up and running. It's completed, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
operational.
Yeah.
Like I say, first intake was this September, so
Yeah.
we've been back 2 or 3 times to take some guests round, and then
Yeah.
to understand how they're settling in. There's been some some challenges, certainly some lessons learned. But yeah, they're really thriving in the environment. So it's
That's
really
great.
nice to
Great to
see.
hear. Great to hear. Let's pick one other, and I think perhaps we were talking before we came on air. Haringey. I think you did some interesting work there. This is on the residential side, isn't it?
It is, yeah, yeah. So we've been working on this project in Haringey now for 10 years. We've probably got another 3 to go. Hopefully the client won't be listening to this, but he would probably like to think it's going to come quicker, but there maybe 2. So it's special because it's taken well, the challenges that we've had to overcome with the client in order to keep the project alive, and then also just because it's such a unique setting for a housing project. Uh, the site is a sink, which is a site of interest for nature conservation. So it's an ecological site. It's one of a series of sites which are dotted from the Lee Valley running into the City of London. And they're kind of wildlife commuting corridors, which is why the designation is on them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
So they enable yeah, exactly, enable birds,
Yeah.
insects,
Yeah.
etc. to
Hedgehogs.
kind of
Yeah.
to move
Yeah.
through from the countryside into the city, which
Right.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure everyone benefits from that. And they skirt the railway lines as they
Mm.
move through. And this site sits at the intersection of 2 railway lines. Now, adding people to an ecological site isn't really a natural fit. So the challenge from a regulatory perspective, planning perspective, is obviously coming up with a strategy that enables the ecology to maintain its value, and for us to bring forward the right amount of homes, such that they can, yeah, we can make greatest benefit of the land. It's in Haringey, just off Seven Sisters, incredibly urban
Mm.
environment.
Mm.
And gosh, where do I start? So, do you want to ask me a
Is it?
question? I feel like I'm
Yeah,
talking.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the ultimate aim of that, the brief for that, clearly, yeah, you got the link and the nature conservation aspect, but the delivery was it social housing? Was it mixed? What was the Haringey's objective with the development?
So it was brought forwards by a private developer. Homes for Haringey, or Haringey Homes as they now are part of the development. So there's 4 buildings. There's a cluster of 4 buildings which sit on the site. Homes for Haringey were, yeah, as I say, a party to the development. They're taking a number of the homes that are being brought forward. So they will deliver homes for their housing list. So again, will meet a really, really high demand.
Yeah.
Um,
And looking at some of because is this one still? I mean, these days the quality of the renders and the design visualization is so high. It's sometimes difficult to know if it's actually real life or if it's still
okay.
in development. Is this one finished? It
No,
looks
so yeah, I mean, there's a
okay.
bit more of a story to that, but I mean, we don't have an hour, but I'll give you the headlines. So we started construction in 2020. The buildings were topped out late 21, at which point the contractor who was working on the project went into receivership.
Mm.
Um, and so the project was effectively mothballed in 2022. We have been back to planning, and we've basically managed to design additional height onto the buildings, which,
Mm.
kind of going back to my earlier point around
Mm.
business case. And at the end of the day, these private developers, um, they can only borrow money if they could demonstrate a return. Um, and with the contractor um, going under, all of a sudden the construction cost jumped by about 15%. And so the rate of return just wasn't there. So they couldn't continue with the lending that they had. So the only way to get the project kind of back on track was to go back to planning, was to uh, yeah, to seek consent for these additional homes. So we've managed to add an additional 40 homes to the
Right.
original consent,
Yeah.
which now we move forwards through the various
Yeah.
stages of additional approvals. So we
Yeah.
got planning approval last year. It took a while for the final approvals to come through. The
Yeah.
submission went in last year, and we are just working through sort of final technical
Yeah.
submissions in order to get that project back on site early next year.
Great. All right. We'll look out for the how that progresses. Certainly, the way that those blocks of the buildings are landscaped.
It's very landscape. It's a very, very unusual
It looks
arrangement.
very nice. It looks, it looks sympathetic to where it is, and it's quite an interesting sort of profile, isn't it, in
Topography,
terms
yeah. I
of
mean, the topography
yes,
and the landscape
yeah,
was absolutely central to that original idea of just forming a separation between people and ecology through the use of landscape. So
yeah,
um, allowing the natural topography to stay where it was, and then just
yeah.
elevate the plane for people above that to form that physical separation subtly through design rather than so kind of crudely through a fence. So
It looks a great design. It looks a great design, and we'll put a link in the show notes so people can have a look at that.
thank you.
Let's move to the end, Matt. I've got two final questions for you, and one is a sort of a bit of an interesting one, I think, because of course this week we've had one of the great architects, famous architect Frank Gehry, sadly died this week, and reading the obituaries, it reminded me also of an article I saw recently, and it was, is the era of the superstar architect. I think sometimes they were called starchitects, which is a terrible mashup of those two words. But do you think the era of the star architect is over? I mean, if I think back to, the changing landscape of the city with Richard Rogers and Norman Foster and all those, those great giants in
Yeah.
decades past. Where are we at with the superstar architect and those
Well, Norman's
big?
doing well.
Okay.
So, but maybe I think you've hit the nail on the head in that. I think Norman's still 80.
Mm.
I mean, Frank Gehry is 96.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're incredibly ambitious as individuals and as a practice, and we definitely feel like we could be working on we are working on some amazing projects, but there's nothing out there that we don't think we can get our teeth into. And when you look back at sort of Rogers, Foster, that whole kind of group of five, Terry Farrell, Nicholas Grimshaw, I think I've probably forgotten one or two. Uh, they didn't really get going until they're in their mid-40s.
Mm.
I mean, I think Rogers won the Pompidou basically hadn't done anything, or they've been doing they've been doing houses and relatively small scale work,
Mm.
pioneering, but relatively small scale work. and then kind of out of the blue, he goes and wins Pompidou, which is his first significant building. Yeah,
It's
I mean,
almost like
it's
the
a bit of a Warren
breakthrough, isn't it?
Buffett approach for architects, unfortunately, that you've got to build that career consistently over
Yeah.
time, and then when you if you can stay at it until you're in your kind of 80s and 90s, it's compounded to such a point that maybe the stock architects opportunities are there. I mean, I think there's certainly still signature architects out there. I mean, Bjarke Ingels is one who is similar age to us, who's I think incredible salesman.
And has he done work in London?
Yeah, Google HQ with
Oh,
Tim
okay,
Scully.
yes. Yeah, okay.
And I think they've got other projects as well.
Yeah. So
So
some of
do I
it is,
think the era is over? No. I think it's such a high. I think we exist in such a highly regulated environment now, though. So that point to how do you differentiate yourself? How do you stand out? Is definitely a question that you need to address as a practice. And
do you think
before
the
you ask me
Lloyd's,
the question, we don't have an answer to that, Matt. We've got a strategy retreat planned for January, so I'll put it on the agenda.
yeah, no, it's, I guess like a lot of professions, music would be another one. It's, you sort of, the stars align, don't they? And there's some breakthrough project or breakthrough moment, with the right kind of clients, an adventurous client, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you think something like the Lloyd's building, just to use a kind of obvious example, do you think that would ever get built in 2026? No.
No, I don't. No, I don't. And you look at the city. I mean, look at what's being built in the city of London now. There is.
They're a bit anemic, aren't they? Because
Yeah.
when I look, I mean, I've got that view is just literally just down the road from here. And what's the big one? It's the latest really big one. It's just such a
22 Bishopsgate.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Lloyd's building. I mean, it's really interesting. I don't know if you've been in the building or around the building.
I haven't. No, I've
Yeah,
been around the outside a lot.
From a health and safety, I mean, as much as it is like the health and safety stuff is there are elements which it does feel like it's an over-regulation, but there are kind of high-level walkways and like little spiral staircases at the top of the Lloyd's building in order to access areas to service equipment. And you look at it and you think, my God, I do not fancy being out there.
Yeah.
And maybe that side of me, and that does influence design ultimately. That probably for good reason, I would add.
Yeah. And I guess also now you're layering on sustainability, emissions, energy efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, they were designed very much designed in a different time. Sort of abundant energy was coming, wasn't it?
Yeah. Interesting. Great. Well, last question for you. Actually, we're going to come back to Matt now. Leadership. So, been running with your partners the practice for 20 plus years now. How would you say? How would you say your leadership style has changed over that course of time?
I think it's as a group, it's a bit like a marriage in that you kind of everyone has changed, and we've definitely learned to appreciate each other's specialisms and peculiarities individually. I mean, we started this business when we were in our late 20s, so testosterone has definitely tailed off significantly over that period, to the benefit of the way that we manage the business and the way that we lead the business today. I think we've got a bit more patience. than we used to have, and I think that certainly we've got a lot better at communicating and trying to make sure that we are bringing rather than the case of we've gone over here, guys. It's actually this is where we think we should be going, guys and girls. And we need your support. You know, you're part of the journey ultimately. Everything's better done in company, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And on that journey, Matt, have you had anybody that's I mean, a lot of people that maybe have started in corporate life often have an influential first manager. I mean, who's been a great influence on you as you've been developing? Is it your other partners, for example, or is it somebody external?
I think there's. It's funny you picked on the Millhouse just before we started chatting.
This book, just for listeners, is a really interesting residential project. I had extreme building home envy looking at that. It's a beautiful mill house over a pond or a little stream, beautifully renovated. Looked amazing. Would love to live somewhere like that.
Yeah, well, we were again. I mean, that's the project we were on. We were on that project for 5 years, and the mill house was just one component. So, yeah, incredibly fortunate. It's interesting, isn't it? When you kind of you use these words and then you reflect on whether or not it was incredibly formative in the practice in terms of the way we do things. And I think part of that was working with it's a very, very, very unusual set of circumstances where we worked with a client representative. So we didn't work directly to begin with, actually. So we didn't work directly with the client. Everything went through the client representative. Who was a gentleman who lived in Calgary. So he was coming over for 2 weeks, a month, to review design, develop ideas with us, and then kind of support us in resolution, design, construction. And Richard, as much as he was influential and supportive around the design ideas, the sort of personal relationship which I formed with him and still have with him around business leadership, he would have been the first person who really kind of encouraged me to take a step back and away from the projects and focus on business and think about values. And he'll be very disappointed that I can't remember them. So he was. Yeah, really, really enjoyed working with him, and we're 15 years on, maybe, or maybe not quite that much, but we're quite a number of years on, and we're going as a family to see them in Easter next year. So yeah.
Good example. Matt, we won't take any more of your time. Thank you so much for that. That was fascinating stuff. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.